Hey guys, welcome to the BMW Blog YouTube channel and welcome to Germany once again. Today I'm going to get behind the wheel of two brand new BMWs. One of them, it's peeking right behind me, and that's the all-new 2 Series Coupe, and more specifically the M240i xDrive. And on the side of it, you have the all-new BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe, another car that I have a chance to drive a little bit later today. So with that being said, let's take a quick look at the M240i, and then I'll jump behind the wheel. I'll tell you more about the driving experience, and I'll share some of the changes compared to the previous generation and of course how it drives. So stay tuned for that, and let's take a closer look at the car. So here I am. I'm behind the wheel of the new BMW M240i xDrive. There are actually two models, M240i. One of them is the xDrive all-wheel drive, which will launch first, and then at a later date, BMW will also launch the rear-wheel drive version. Unfortunately, both cars are only available with an 8-speed automatic transmission, so there is no more 6-speed manual, and that's something that I truly enjoyed in the previous generation, and that's something that I always loved in a 1 Series or a 2 Series. Hopefully, BMW will have a 6-speed manual in the G87 M2, which arrives next year. So if you're interested to still roll your own gears, that might be the only option for now. So what's the M240i all about? First of all, it's still a 6-cylinder, 3.0-liter engine. It makes about 382 horsepower in the US. Torque is 500 Newton meters and 369 pounds-feet of torque. So it's a bump over the previous generation. I think it's getting about 35 to 40 more horsepower, so that makes the car go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in about 4.3 seconds, which is extremely fast. Like the other models, it's got a really nice power delivery. It pulls hard at almost every RPM. It's got a lot of power, a lot of torque across almost the entire range. I think the full RPM kicks in early, like 1900, and basically what it means that even if you find yourself in the 4th or 5th gear, there is still a lot more that you can get out of the engine. So it's still gonna put you in the back of the seat, and typical B58, it's probably one of BMW's best engines. From what I know so far, it's quite reliable, and it's a pleasure to drive. Of course, if you're in Europe, you're getting a different exhaust sound because of the OPF, which is the auto particle filter. It's an additional filter that's been installed on the exhaust to help with the emission regulations in Europe that are a little bit stricter than in the US. So if you're a US customer, you're not going to get that. So it means that the exhaust sound will be a little bit deeper, a little bit louder. There is quite a difference, actually. We've done plenty of videos where we show the European version versus the US version of the B58, and it's clearly, you know, a difference there. You can hear that immediately. But overall, typical behavior of the engine. You are getting that fake sound inside the car, so nothing new there. I believe you can turn it off if you want to. But from the outside, you're getting those nice blurbs, especially when downshifting. So compared to the previous generation, the new 2 Series Coupe has grown in size a little bit. The wheelbase, it's about 51 millimeters longer. The track at the front, it's about 52 millimeters wider, and the back, it's actually 31 millimeters wider as well. the overall height of the car has decreased, so it's about 28 millimeters lower than the outgoing model. So what does it mean? Basically, design-wise, you can see that the car has a lot more width and a better presence on the road. It's got a really nice stance. So what are some of the mechanical changes down to the new 2 Series Coupe, let's say, compared to the previous model? First and foremost, let's start at the front. So there is a 30-degree increased negative camber, which it's going to actually help with the car's agility. So what I've noticed actually driving on those curvy roads and going through some of those hairpins here is that the car is super agile, and at the same time, because of that negative camber, it kind of keeps you on the road. So even when you're going fast, or maybe you're making a mistake, it helps you be a better driver in a way. And that of course works in tandem with the limited slip differential in the back. That's always been the case in a BMW with a rear wheel drive. That limited slip, it's just gonna allow you to have some fun with the car. It's gonna allow a little bit of tail spin, but at the point that where you're not getting to the dangerous territory, but rather just having some fun. So I truly enjoy having the limited slip on BMW cars, and especially on this one. Speaking of that, it is standard on the M240i xDrive and rear wheel drive, but it is optional on the 230i model. So of course the springs and the dampers are adapted for this car, they're unique to this car, and that's not something that's new to BMW models. Basically they were tuned to be specific to the body style, to the driving characteristics, and of course to the type of driver. There are also some stiffer rubber bushings, and that's going to help with the agility of the car. Of course, like with all the new generations BMW, we have to talk about the steering and the steering feedback. And, you know, this is not an M2, so let's start with that. You're not gonna get the same steering precision, maybe, the steering heaviness, you know, the heaviness, whatever you want to call it, that you would get in an M car. That's just by design. BMW always wants to keep a gap in between models. So when the G87 M2 comes out next year, that's gonna be at a higher level when it comes to steering feedback, precision, so on and so forth. With that being said, if I go back in time a couple of years, the last time that I drove an M240i, I can try to compare that one versus this one, and I could say immediately that you're getting a better steering in the new M240i. I would say it's a lot more precise. You're getting a little bit more feedback from the road. It's also a little bit heavier, so by that I mean you have to apply a lot more hand torque to the steering to get the car to go where you want it to go. So it's a nice balance in between. Let's say you're a driver that, you know, enjoys spirited driving, and that's why you're going into the sport mode, and one that wants to be, you know, in a comfortable setting and drive longer distances. And that's why, you know, the steering, it's adaptive based on the driving mode that you're in. Speaking of the driving modes, same philosophy applies there. So you're having the same range from comfort to sport and sport plus. And just like all the new BMW models, the engineers decided to offer a wider gap in between the modes. So if you're in comfort and you're looking to go on a road trip and you just want to be in a comfortable drive and comfortable setting, you don't want the car to just bang you around, then that comfort mode will cater to you. The opposite pole, basically you have the Sport and Sport Plus, which is highly adjustable. You can adjust the transmission there, the steering input and response, the acceleration, so on and so forth. So that's the highest sport mode basically, and that's the one that's going to give you the most aggressiveness. That's the one that's going to give you that you know, BMW feel that you're craving in a 2 Series Coupe, for example. So having those wide ranges, BMW is likely trying to cater to a wider demographic, as they do with most of the new models that came out. Speaking about the suspension, two options, Sport and Adaptive M. The sport suspension, it's not in this car, so I'm driving in the M Adaptive, but from what I understood, it's the same one that you will see in the 3 Series and the 4 Series. So from what I remember, it's a lot stiffer, it will bang you around a lot more, and of course you can tune that suspension with some aftermarket parts, and you can make it track ready. So even though it's not an M2, you can absolutely work with that to turn it into a, let's say, a weekend, track car. Of course, the Adaptive, it's the one that I'm in. It's the one that I've enjoyed a lot recently, and just because of the things that I just mentioned a little bit earlier, where you have the different driving modes, and I can change the character of the car, by just, clicking on those switches down here. The transmission, it's the 8-speed automatic. There is no 6-speed manual. So this one, it's standard in all the models. Unfortunately, if you're an enthusiast that enjoys to rope your own gears, you won't have an option. I am hoping that the new G87 M2 will keep the 6-speed manual. And that's something that has a very high take rate in the US. Even though this one, it's an xDrive M240i, is still rear biased. It's the same setup that you've seen in other BMWs as well. So basically, all-wheel drive, power sent to all 4 wheels, but it's got a rear bias. So basically when needed, and especially cornering, the engine is going to send a lot more power to the back, and that's where that tailspin comes into play, and that's where you're having a lot of fun with the car. Now, if you want to get your M240i ready for the track, then I suggest going with the rear wheel drive setup. Maybe you change the suspension as well, and now you're having a slightly lighter car and one that's more geared towards a weekend kind of track warrior. So I've seen a lot of customers that have an M240i with a rear wheel drive, and especially sport suspension, and I see them tracking their cars on the weekends as well. Let's talk about the inside of the car a little bit too. I know I've touched on this in previous videos, but it's the typical BMW setup. Not much has changed. You can see a lot of technology here from the 3 Series sedan. So this one has not gone down the route of the new 4 Series or the i4, where you have those large screens and all digital. So it's still got a 3 Series, dashboard and IP. It runs on iDrive 7 still. Center console here, you have that small knob for the iDrive controller. The M Sport steering wheel the whole cockpit has a driver orientation, and that's another thing that's typical to BMW cars, and something that I truly enjoy seeing in every new car. As you can see here, some M Sport seats with double stitching. You have a lot of options when it comes to seats in the new 2 Series. So you can go for Sense Attack, you can go for full leather with double stitching, perforated. So quite a few options, nothing really new. Same thing that you've seen in other models as well. Behind the steering, you have the typical digital black panel. So it changes based on the driving mode that you're in. It goes into more of a reddish kind of look, if you go in Sport and Sport Plus. And if you go into Eco, it turns a little bit blue there. Interior space, it's also something that you see in a 2 Series. So it's similar space from what I can tell compared to the previous model. It does seem to be a little bit less headroom because the car, as I said earlier, it's 28 millimeters lower, but overall it's quite spacious. I'm actually quite tall. I'm about 6'2", 1.9 meters tall. So I'm a fairly tall guy, and I have plenty of space. As you can see, the seat is not even all the way in the back. Of course, if I go with the seat all the way back, there is not much room on the rear bench. And that's something that, it's common in any sports compact coupe. So no change in the 2 Series. If there are just 2 of you traveling, you should be just fine. There is also plenty of cargo space in the back, and you can also use the rear seats for additional storage. Going through some of those back roads, I did have a chance to really push the car. I love the cornering performance, honestly. I felt like the car was planted on the road. It was extremely responsive. I didn't have to work too much the steering wheel to keep the car, going the direction that I wanted to. So when you point it with micro adjustments, the car just listens to you. Slight body roll, nothing major. Of course, I was riding most of the time in Sport Plus, and that stiffens up, the entire car. So it's gonna stiffen up the transmission, the steering, the suspension. You're getting a higher RPM on the engine. The throttle response, it's better. So if you want to go on some of those back roads and have some fun, I think that's the right setting. You can hear also the engine sound a little bit. As you can see me going on a straight here. There is no understeer really, so the front, it's actually quite agile. Probably, from the negative camber, that's something that I've talked about already, and I think that's really helps with the driving characteristics of the car. So going through some of those corners, I kind of wanted to see what it feels like to drive a little bit more rear bias. So I turn off the DTC on it a little bit. And of course, clearly the car started to give me a lot more tail spin. But the surface started to dry out a little bit compared to earlier today. So I still had a lot of grip. I was able to keep the car planted in the corner. I love the exit angle of the car, so I would go pretty aggressive in. I would brake late. I love the brakes, by the way, on this one, the M Sport brakes. And then I would just floor the gas pedal, and the car will give me a little bit of tail spin, not too much. I was able to control that from the steering inputs, so it was quite responsive. And then I would just really come out straight out of the corner with carrying quite some speed. So I would say at no point I felt like I was in any danger. Of course, I had a DTC off, which I don't recommend. It was really just for a short period of time to kind of try it out. But I just wanted to see what the car can do, and if you go in a track mode setting. So when I talked to the BMW engineers earlier today, they said that some of their benchmarks when it came to developing this car go as far back as the BMW 1 Series M, the 1 M Coupe, one of the most iconic BMWs, of the last 2 decades, if not more. And when it comes to that, they kind of wanted to replicate a little bit of the 1M driving experience. Of course, that car was a bin parts type of project, parts from the M3, parts from the 135 IS, which was a fantastic car. But the DNA of the car, that's something that the engineers wanted to infuse inside the new 2 Series, and especially in the M240i Coupe. So have they managed to do that? I would say in a way the car, it's sportier than the previous generation. I do enjoy it quite a bit. I had a lot of fun driving the car today. I was going quite fast, as you might have seen in some of the footage, through the corners. It's really composed. There is not a lot of body roll. It makes me drive quite fast. I mean, it's a powerful car. I also enjoy the braking performance. At no time I felt like I was in danger of not being able to stop in time, even though it was kind of, dampy today. There was a little bit of rain that came down earlier. But I would say I was pretty fast driving this car. So comparing to the previous one, clearly an improvement. Is it a revolutionary project compared to the outgoing model? Probably not. It's an evolution. I think BMW figured out that they have a good recipe with the M240i, the previous generation, so they wanted to just improve this car. I suspect it will sell just as well as the previous model, if not better. I don't see why not. It has the same characteristics. It's a fun sports car. If you don't want to go full M, if you don't want to go all the way out to an M car, maybe that's not your cup of tea. Maybe you're not into a very aggressive car, or maybe if you want to downplay your status but still have a lot of fun driving, then I would say the M240i Coupe, it's the right choice. Very few things that I could pick on. I would say, same thing, the steering, not as stiff as I, wanted to, or maybe that I got used to in some other cars, but that comes down to the personal preference. The exterior design, again, I love the exterior design. The only change that I would make there, it's probably the taillights. I would prefer them to have the inner graphics kind of pointing upwards. That's something that I've seen on the sketches. before the car was actually, you know, designed as a full model, and that's something that I like. I don't know if they're ever going to change that, but I understood the reasoning behind that. Basically, they wanted to continue with the same kind of downwards frame that's in the back, which gives the car additional width. Whatever that means, that was their choice. So other than that, great car, a lot of fun. I look forward to taking the car to a racetrack. I'm actually quite curious to see how it compares to an M2 competition. I asked the engineer also before I went on this drive, and I said, is the new M240i getting close to the M2 competition, the outgoing model? And he said it's getting there, but it's still not as M as that car. So basically there's still a gap in between this one and the F87 M2. But I'm assuming when that G87 M2 comes out, there will be a bigger gap in between that and the outgoing M2. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this review. As always, thanks for watching till the end. I hope you got some value out of it. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe. We have a lot of videos going live every single week. Some of them are quite unique and you can't find them anywhere else. We're also some of the first guys to get our hands on new BMW products. So please subscribe to us. Hit that notification bell. Every time we upload a new video, you will get the notification and it will help you be the first to watch it and leave a comment. And also, you know, before ending, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about the new 2 Series. Do you like the design? Do you feel like BMW is going into the right direction when it comes to the driving experience? And especially, are you excited about the G87 M2? Because from what I heard, it'll be a fantastic car, and we might even see some special models being designed on that platform. As always, thanks for watching. This is Horatio with BMW Blog, and I'll see you guys soon.